Welcome to this virtual tour of the Town of Halton Hills Helson Gallery's New Acquisitions exhibition. I'm Judy Daly, curator of the Helson Gallery, and with me is the exhibition's curator, Cara Bruce, who will give us her insights into the art and artists included in the show. Cara, can you give us some background on the exhibition and the town's permanent art collection?
The Town of Halton Hills art collection includes over 700 works by various contemporary and historical artists, in addition to the culturally significant Helson collection. All of these works were given to the town by private and foundation donors. In 2020, 62 works of art were received for the collection from 10 generous donors. This exhibition showcases a selection of these donations and looks at how they add value to the current collection. Many donations add to the profile of existing artists in the collection, and others create new opportunities to showcase the talent of different artists. Whether the town's collection previously included work by an artist or not, many connections to the collection can be made with these new acquisitions. This exhibition looks to examine and extend these narratives by exhibiting both new and previously donated artworks.
The exhibition includes a number of works in printmaking media. Can you tell us about that and what you learned about some of the printmakers who are represented in the show?
There are a variety of printmaking techniques to illustrate a range of subjects in this exhibition, from etchings, woodcuts, lithographs, aquatints, mezzotints, seriographs, and linocuts. I believe almost every kind of printmaking is represented in the show, which is remarkable considering they are just recently donated works from different donors. Some of these donated prints are from some very well-known printmakers, like Fred Hagen and Dorothy Stevens, who have existing art in the town collection. Fred Hagen was a Toronto-born artist who was born in 1918 and died in 2003. He had a career as a painter, lithographer, watercolorist, and art instructor for more than 7 decades. Hagen attended the Ontario College of Art and later taught lithograph there for almost 40 years. He didn't identify with a specific art movement or school of thought. Rather, his art is described as autobiographical. He was known to draw inspiration from his lived environment, which now provides an interesting commentary on the life in Ontario in the 1940s. Hagen's portraits of humanity were deeply symbolic and combined Cubist, Mannerist, Expressionist, and even classical principles of composition. David Dale Cox's recent donation of his lithograph on paper, titled Child and the Moon, showcases the artist's expertise in printmaking, while at the same time expressing definite emotion. We also received a beautiful etching on paper by Dorothy Stevens from Mercedes Espinosa. Dorothy Stevens was an earlier Canadian printmaker who was born in 1880 and died in 1966. She has been referred to as the most accomplished Canadian etcher of her day. Stevens was born in Toronto and studied fine art in London and later in Paris. During World War I, she continued her career as an etcher in Toronto and New York. She depicted home front subjects as part of the war program, commissioning works from Canadian artists. She was commissioned to do 2 plates, one of a shipbuilding and the second of women in the airplane factory, to be sold to raise money for war relief. She undertook 4 additional plates on her own initiative. Although these were not accepted into the program, her prints were considered to be the best produced under it and vividly depicted the hustle and forced pace of the war work. After the war, Stevens was awarded a scholarship to travel around Europe to continue her art studies. The work she produced during this time received rave reviews and later won her awards, commissions, and exhibitions. I thought it was interesting when I was collecting information about her that her art students thought she was quite the character, with her wild stories and unconventional appearance, in trousers and chain smoking while they painted on Toronto Island.
Prints and drawings are often a good starting point for people who are interested in collecting art. Because prints are produced in multiples, they're generally more affordable than paintings. And as Cara noted, there are many outstanding historic and contemporary Canadian artists whose bodies of works are primarily in print media. Let's look at some of the other acclaimed Canadian artists featured in the show. Some of our country's best known artists are those of the Group of 7, and they're represented in our collection's foundational gift, the Helson Collection, donated by Fred and Rosanna Helson. Could you tell us about the connections you found between the Group of 7 and some of these new acquisitions?
Yes, many connections to the group of seven can be made to recent donations. Notably, we received donations of art by two of the members of the group of seven to add to the town's collection, one of which was the founding member of the group of seven, Arthur Lismer. We received a charcoal on paper drawing titled Peace, October 1935 from donor Mr. Bruce Ferrera Wells. This drawing is so lively and highlights that Lismer was an avid sketcher, never without a piece of charcoal or pencil and a pad of paper. He drew hundreds of caricature sketches and cartoons. Many are held in the collection of the Toronto Arts and Letters Club, of which he was a member. This political cartoon lightly mocks the peace discussions following Italy's invasion of Ethiopia between the Emperor of Ethiopia and the Canadian Prime Minister. The Emperor appears standing before the desk of Canadian Prime Minister with his arms outstretched, each hand holding an object as if offering a choice between peace and continuing conflict. Mr. Bruce Ferrera Wells also donated an oil on wood panel painting by Lionel Lamont Fitzgerald titled Lockport, Manitoba. Lionel joined the group of seven after the death of founding member J.E.H. MacDonald in 1932. He was the only member of the group of seven to be based in Western Canada. Lionel drew upon his immediate surroundings in his landscape and still life paintings. In this painting, you can really see how he has continued in this fashion. In the two paintings in the Helson collection, his work tends to be more abstracted, which is the direction he took in his later works. Another artist that was taught by a member of the group of seven was Charles Goldhammer, an American-born Canadian artist. Goldhammer made art for Eaton's advertising pages and created cartoons for Star Weekly. He studied with Arthur Lismer at the Ontario College of Art, after which he taught art there and then continued on to teach at the Central Technical School for 42 years. Goldhammer, who enlisted for the RCAF, is best known as an official war artist who from 1944 to 1946 drew and documented severely burnt airmen recovering at an advanced plastic surgery unit in England. He was well regarded for these incredibly detailed sketches and watercolors. After the war, he taught art and immersed himself in art societies, regularly exhibiting his paintings and prints. And lastly, we received contemporary donations that carry on the tradition of landscape painting. These include Clive Posey with his expressive and colorful watercolor painting, William Band, a local Halton Hills artist who captures the lived landscapes in his environment, and Douglas Purdon, who is the master of color mixing and produces highly realistic illustrations of the landscape.
It's great to be able to expand our understanding of the artists of our collection, and especially to give added dimension to the group of seven artists. What are some of the other connections between the new acquisitions and the Helson collection that you found through your research?
There are absolutely connections to artists in the Helson collection to some recent donations, one of which is Lilly Osmond Adams. We received a pastel on paper drawing titled Floral Still Life by donor R&R Bateman. Lilly Osmond Adams was a Canadian Toronto artist who was born in 1865 and died in 1945. She studied at various institutes, but most interestingly, studied privately under McGillivray Knowles, whose work is represented in the Helson collection, as well as J.W. Beatty, who also instructed Adams while attending the art school. Another artist who was instructed by J.W. Beatty was Adrian Dingle. Dingle is known for painting landscapes, marine subjects, figure studies, and portraits. He was born in Barmouth, North Wales, and came to Canada in 1914, where his family settled in Oakville. He studied under J.W. Beatty at the summer school of the Ontario College of Art. After his formal training, he taught in England as an illustrator while still continuing his studies under James Bateman and John Mansbridge. When he returned to Canada, he regularly exhibited art and continued to teach in Kitchener and Etobicoke. Dingle not only has the connection to an artist in the collection, but he also has a connection to the donors of his artwork. Dingle was best known as the creator and artist behind the Second World War comic book Nelvana of the Northern Lights, which featured a female superhero fighting for justice. Nelvana was one of the world's first female superheroes. Nelvana's name was later used for a very successful Canadian animation company established in the 1970s. Donors Dave and Dale Cox, who contributed greatly to the town's collection with many gifts of art, have had an extensive career in animation, working on such popular shows as Inspector Gadget and the Care Bears, and working for Nelvana. Lastly, another interesting connection with an artist from the Helson collection was from Edgar Lee Larr. Edgar was born in Elgin County, Ontario, and studied at the Central Ontario College of Art under Frederick Chandler, whose portrait painting is represented in the Helson collection. In this print on paper, donated by Peter Carey Moon, it is evident color is not an integral part of his art practice. Edgar was colorblind, so he preferred to work mainly in printing techniques of etching and mezzotint.
Were there donations that showed a broad range or a series of an artist's work?
Yes, one of which was a collection of lithographs titled Lithographs of Ontario by artists Charles Goldhammer and Tom Stone. Lithographs of Ontario is a portfolio including a total of 15 lithographs, 9 by Goldhammer, 6 by Stone, and an introduction by Arthur Lismer. A total of 9 prints from this portfolio were donated by Mercedes Espinoza, which show a variety of locations across Ontario throughout the seasons. We also received a collection of prints by artist Maxwell Bates from donor Mercedes. Maxwell Bates was born in Calgary, Alberta, and was the son of well-known architect William Stanley Bates. Bates enjoyed painting at a young age, but until a stroke in 1961, hadn't pursued art on a full-time basis. After his stroke that left his left arm partially paralyzed on the left side of his body, he moved to Victoria, BC to recover and focus exclusively on painting. He relied on his art sales for income, so he fully involved himself in the social scene of the arts community through dealers, openings, and parties. Bates was regarded as an expressionist painter who painted those around him, striking portraits and character studies from art events, restaurant outings, domestic parties, and the spectacle of exaggerated social situations. I believe the 3 prints on display in this exhibition showcase his ability to portray truthful human interactions in social environments. I just want to say thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to curate the show and talk briefly about a handful of the artworks.
Thank you for joining us for this virtual tour. For updates, please visit our webpage.